with most people, so it's not going to apply to everyone, but just kind of yeah. Any questions, comments, things you liked, didn't like about first 2 weeks?
I have a couple of questions. I've written them down. So, but the first thing, I remember seeing something about progression, a post or an email or something, but I can't find it now. Could you like maybe put it in the spreadsheets? That would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was actually in the like intro thing or whatever. I was actually gonna write a blog. I didn't know if like maybe a post would help people, or that was one of the things I was gonna talk about is like how to progress. Yeah, I'll probably just write up something really quick and I'll post it at the end of this. I'll probably post it in the group page. I think you can do like a sticky post or something like that. So I'll probably do that, and then I'll put it. I can put it in your guys' just copy and paste it in the probably as a separate tab or something. But in general, like and that was one of the things I was going to talk about as far as like tracking your stuff. Like everyone who is really proactive about like tracking their stuff, I know it might be kind of a pain in the ass to do it in Fitocracy and on Google spreadsheets, but it's just so hard to see like a week-to-week kind of progress in Fitocracy because it's just like, you know, just workouts like this, and it's hard to like compare. You know what I mean? It's not like right side by side and stuff. So everyone who did should have gotten like wherever it said, like say if you said I did 110 kilos for 4 sets of 8 on deadlift, like right beside that it should have said like W2, which stands for week 2, like what your goal like weight range was. So it might have said like if you did 110 for 8s, I might have said like 115 to 125. Again, that's just kind of like a good range because, you know, some days you're not feeling too good, you should probably pull back a little bit. Some days you're feeling better, you should push it a little bit. So that range can kind of fluctuate with some people. But that's a good way to kind of progress with the big lifts, you know, maybe like 5 to 10 pounds, you know, 5 kilos a week. And that's assuming that the movements aren't like totally new to you. Like if you just started deadlifting, you might be able to add a lot more than that, or just started doing any movement just because the learning pattern is going to be a lot quicker. If you've been doing the movement for a while, you're just not going to be able to add like 20 kilos every week. You know, you're just going to, once you get to a decent amount of strength, that's just not going to happen. So yeah, something around that range is going to be pretty good. 5 to 10 pounds or 5 kilos, depending on how much you can even go up, like increments, depending on your weights. That's like the easiest way to progress. And then with the little stuff, like even like some dumbbell work or any kind of cable work we have, lunges, things like that, that's just going to be more difficult to kind of incrementally increase. You're not, I mean, you can't just like, you may start off when you haven't trained at all and be able to curl like 30s, and then when you're like top of your strength, be able to curl like 45 pounds. Like that's just not going to be a huge like discrepancy there. So the better bet for that would be to like use your rep range. So like you have maybe 10 to 12 or 8 to 10. You know, pick a weight that you feel like you can hit on the lower end of that. So again, if I was going to do like curls for 8 to 10 reps, I would hit my curls for like maybe 35s for 2 sets of 8, and then the next week I try to hit that for 2 sets of 10. And once I can comfortably do that for like the max amount of reps in that kind of range, then I would add weight. So that's going to be a much slower progression because it may end up being like, you know, 35s for 2 sets of 8, and then 35s for 2 sets of 9, and then 35s for 2 sets of 9 again, and then 35s for 1 set of 10 and 1 set of 8. So it may take like you like a month or a month and a half just to add like 5 pounds to your curl or something like that. That's totally understandable. You're just not going to be able to put that much weight on those lifts. They're just limited with how small your muscles are, things like that. So there's like the two ways you can do it. Just the big lifts, probably just go ahead and add weight as long as you feel comfortable. And then with the smaller lifts, I would try to make sure you're hitting like your max amount of reps, and then only then like make sure your form is strict too, because a lot like on isolation stuff, like with lateral raises and lunges, you're like, you know, skipping your depth or whatever. A lot of that stuff you can kind of trick yourself into thinking you're getting stronger, but you're just like moving the weight faster or something. So make sure the assistance work is pretty strict so you can kind of gauge your progress. that makes sense, Carl?
Yep.
Sweetness.
Greg, I
That's
missed.
kind of, oh, you're cool. Go ahead.
My fourth and final workout for this week. It should have been Friday night, and I still haven't done it, so I was going to do it this morning. But in a case like that, do you, like tomorrow night I'll start with, what is it, upper 1?
Yeah.
So do I just do lower 2 today, and then just get back on track with upper 1 tomorrow, or?
Yeah, that's good. Like we talked, I think we kind of mentioned that in the first video that again, there's going to be probably a, if this was your job and nothing else mattered to you and you had to train and eat in certain ways, maybe some hypothetical things that you could talk about as being like 100% optimal. But that's not the case for anyone in this group. It's not our, we're not training for the Olympics or something. So yeah, you have to be able to adjust on the fly, and especially when it's like an upper lower. Like I've squatted 2 days in a row before or something. I've squatted 2 times in a day before, or any kind of movement. So I feel like even as maybe general population people, we do limit ourselves, and this isn't like an argument for just like training all the time as hard as we can, whatever, no recovery, but I do think we somewhat limit ourselves, like psychologically, like, oh, I trained hard yesterday, I can't train hard today or something, when we tend to recover pretty quickly. And especially when you're doing like a lower body day and then an upper body day the next time, should be completely fine.
Okay, good.
That's good to know, because I was trying to do like cardio or something on the days in between and running out of time, but I can do it 2 days in a row. I don't need a long recovery time then.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say, especially with exercise stuff, like make it fit your schedule. That's kind of the most important thing. Especially too, like if you're maybe if you only have like 45 minutes, say if like you arbitrarily want to work out on like a Friday and you only have 45 minutes, but you would have like an hour and a half on a weekend, you're probably going to get a much higher quality workout if you would push it back to the next day. So you'll have more time. You won't be like rushing your warm up and doing all these things that are kind of weird you wouldn't normally be doing. So I'd much rather people find like a good chunk of time. So if that means like pushing their day either forward or behind or whatever, it's not a big deal. Especially like for cardio work too, that's not going to, I actually say that's probably even a better idea to kind of separate your cardio from your weight training as much as possible. Especially like from a recovery standpoint too.
I thought it would go on.
You're fine. You're fine. Coffee.
Did you hear me, Jen? Maybe?
Sorry. I lost the audio for a little bit.
Oh, you're cool. I pretty much just said, yeah, you can definitely separate your cardio days from your weight training days. And again, but even I can tell the other people the same thing the other way around. Like if someone doesn't have access to cardio equipment, they're like, hey, I can't do cardio on my off days. I would say that's fine. Just do it on your training days after you lift. So I don't think that's going to be a big difference as far as
all right.
I mean, it's energy expenditure for the most part. So you could probably make the argument like if you're going to do like the conditioning type workouts after a weight training session, you'll probably be pretty damn tired anyways. So it's like how much effort can you put into that? Mm-hmm. That'd probably be the only thing I would separate from your weights. But as far as like low intensity type cardio, I would say that's pretty manageable, whatever you want to put it.
Was it Beta-alanine that you suggested in your supplements? That stuff is really good. The one day I did 3 workouts. I did, because I went and I did my heavy workout in the gym at lunch, and then I came home and I took one of those and I did the conditioning workout, the one with all the kettlebells, and then I did 20 laps in the pool after that. I'm like, this stuff is really good.
Yeah, it's I'd say it's probably like behind creatine, it's probably the best performance enhancing. I say that's weird, but performance enhancing supplement is what it is. The first time you took it, you have the kind of like
the
skin,
tingling, like nice
like,
and flush, yeah.
That's it's always funny to see people's like first reaction to that. They think like they're dying or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, it's yeah. So I mean that makes sense. I think I talked about a little bit in the spreadsheets of like its mechanism, what it does, but that's what it does. It helps with kind of anaerobic capacity, so that would make sense. So anaerobic capacity would be like swimming is a perfect example of like you're not limited by your aerobic work in the swim. You're kind of limited by you're going pretty damn fast, like lactate building up and things like that. So it buffers all of that. So you'd be able to get tired at a later time. So it's good.
Greg, how do you feel about splitting the workout, like in half? If you know you're pressed for time that day, if you do half in the morning and half in the evening?
Yeah, I would probably do. Let me check out your specific routine here. I just have yours up. Even doing something, you guys are training 4 days a week, so that's kind of a little bit, yeah, I would say, even though I'm doing like I'm just giving you an example, like on upper one, like even the first 3 lifts, like your deadlift, your overhead press, and your chin-ups, that could be like a solid first workout, and like getting the rest of your stuff in later. Or if you're really rushed for time and you really focused on your strength, you could just do like your big lift, like whatever it is, deadlift, squat, bench press, whatever, and then doing all of your assisted stuff later. Since the way I set this up, when I had some people do these routines before I gave them to you guys, that usually the big lift takes just as much time as everything else put together. If that makes sense. So like most people who are doing this were somewhere in between like 20 to 30 minutes on their big lift. So it may take them like 25 minutes to deadlift, but then all their maybe their 6 assistance exercises also took them like 25 minutes. Yep. So that's a good from a time point of view, you could probably split your workout in half, and that's kind of like that wouldn't force you to rush on like your big lifts when again the goal is to get stronger. So
yeah, that upper one, which I guess I'm going to do tomorrow night, is that takes a lot of time. I mean,
yeah,
it does.
Some of the recovery for the deadlifts, I mean, I use every bit of that recovery. Maybe I didn't 20 years ago, but now I do, so that takes a lot.
No, like it's I tell you, like 4 minutes is like, for me, is like a pretty good minimum, like yeah. for a big lift like that when I'm going heavy. So, because I'll usually set the clock, like I'll usually use a stopwatch, and I'll usually walk to the bar around 3:30. And it takes me a lot more than 30 seconds to actually grab the bar. So I'm probably much closer to that 5-minute range, and I don't even pull 8s. Like I'll pull I might pull some 8s, but I'm usually pulling a little bit heavier than that. I think like squats. So bench press, I'm pretty good at recovering at. I can usually stick under 4. Yeah, and it's more cardiovascular too. Like it's been 4 minutes, you're still kind of breathing hard. So I would use that more. That time frame is a good like starting point. But again, if you're just like dead and you're still like breathing incredibly hard, where that next set's gonna suffer. Like you can still take another minute or 2. It's not gonna be a. That's more of a from a practical standpoint. Those rest periods, probably ideally. If you really want to get as strong as you could, I mean, you would just spend 2 hours in the gym and you would pull a set of deadlifts and wait 10, 15 minutes till you're 100% recover and do that again. But we just can't kind of do that from a practical standpoint.
Right. All right, good. That might help, if I can split it in half, do the first half, go to work, come home, finish up with the accessory stuff, and I can start having dinner before 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And I was even going to suggest, you guys are training 4 days a week, and this might be something for yourself because you train at home. But even like some stuff like you just don't have time for, especially, and again, these workouts are set up, so like pretty much the order of importance is in, from top down. So again, if you're not doing your hanging leg raise and your ab stuff on upper one, or even like your curls and dips on upper one, that's probably not as important as like, oh, I didn't get my like OHP in, which is a pretty big lift. So what you can do is even like set a clock on, maybe my workout has to be an hour, and get as much stuff as you can, and then even like on a 5th day, or if you're training 3 days a week on a 4th day, just make it like picking up the spares. So you can just go in there and be like, okay, I didn't get in the bicep work on this day, I didn't get in my hamstring work on this day, so you can just kind of like play with that. But again, with the assistant stuff, like I tell people, it's like I wouldn't sweat not getting it in. What I tell a lot of my clients with there's kind of core work I tell them, and people's core work is going to depend on their goals. But like if you're maybe a bodybuilder or a powerlifter, you may have like 2-3 lifts, which I think like you need to get in this day. And then I kind of just have like, I literally separate it. I'll put like core work and I'll put assistance work. I tell them all the time, especially like people are dieting or like prepping, that it's work. If you feel like shit, just like cash it in, because you're just, most people understand this from training for a long time. Like curls and side raises and abs and, you know, hamstring curls, like the overall benefit you're getting for those movements is, you know, 1/10 of what you're getting from the big stuff. So if you're missing out on that stuff, you're not missing out on much.
Okay, just get the important stuff done.
Yeah, definitely. And there's not, I mean, these programs are pretty minimalistic, but even like for like an upper 2, you guys have like lateral raises and push downs, and the volume's pretty low. Like you guys are only doing 2 sets of kind of high reps, which again, I don't like to do a ton of volume on that stuff because I feel like it's not worth it. But yeah, I would say don't be afraid to kind of like, if you're crushed for time, you know, ditch the stuff that's not going to be a huge importance.
You know, you just mentioned the reps, but I had a question about that too. So they are high reps. I mean, compared to what I'm used to doing, you know, it's in some cases double.
Yeah.
The rep count, and I was just wondering if that was because when I filled out the questionnaire for this program, I put in fat loss. I wanted to cut fat. Is that the reason you programmed it this way, or?
No, I actually don't really. I don't almost look from a little standpoint that these programs are set up. I would say the complexes, like the bear complexes, the squat complex. Some of you have the leg press complex, the conditioning workout. Those are kind of geared towards more fat loss, but I'm just not a big subscriber of like your workouts need to be like fat loss type workouts for the most part. Just I feel like fat loss is going to be mostly predominated with diet. You're like almost everyone that I train for a bodybuilding show, their routines almost don't change at all from like their fattest to their leanest. Only thing that really manipulates, I mean, their cardio will change, but like their actual in the gym training with weights almost doesn't change. Their cardio will change and their food will change, and that's what's going to, you know, make a difference as far as, you know, fat loss and leanness. But the important thing with training is that you're staying strong and you're able to maintain muscle mass. And with most of these big movements, I would say like they're probably capped out is like the highest amount of reps. Like I think you're squatting 8s and 10s for the most part. You're even pressing 8 to 10s and pulling 6 to 8s. That's a kind of like a maximum amount of like volume, at least in reps, I would give people. But I think I talked about this in the first video that it'll pretty much just make a linear periodization, if that makes sense. So linear periodization would just mean that you're going to start off, I mean, if you do it by percentages, but you're going to start off like 70% and then like 72.5 and 75 and 77.5 and 80. So it's just literally going up. So, and again, your intensity being the weight on the bar, it's always going to be inversely related with your reps, right? So if you're doing a single, your intensity is going to be much higher. than if you're doing 10 because you just can't pull that much weight for 10, right? But with that being said, the volume will be dropping over the course of 12 weeks. So we'll, like for deadlifts, we'll start at 6 to 8 reps. Then we'll probably end up dropping to 4 to 6 reps, and then maybe 2 to 4, but probably even like 3 to 5. I think that 3 to 5 spot is probably the I don't like general population people to go below like triples for the most part. I feel like that's kind of a good maximum, even if you're doing like a 1 rep or a 3 rep max. I feel like that's a pretty good indicator of your strength. You don't need to like actually 1 rep max unless it's just fun for you. So yeah, the work will get heavier, but I guess the whole idea of that is I put out that video. I put the video on Fitocracy, I think, of like just tapering and like adjusting your volume. So over this first 4 weeks, like you guys will get accustomed to some pretty damn high volume. I'm not calculating your volume by like tonnage, but it's going to be pretty damn high. What you're going to do, you're going to like adapt to that volume though. You're going to like maybe if you're only used to doing 5,000 pounds of deadlifts, that first week was 10,000, then it'll be 12,000, then 13, and 15,000. So like you may feel like shit the first 2 weeks because you're just adapting the volume. Once you kind of do adapt to that volume, you'll be in a much better place once we start pulling, say, heavier weights with like the 4 to 6s. Then probably in that last phase too, we'll end up dropping the volume. Like we won't even pull 4 sets. We may end up pulling like 1 top set and then 3 like back off sets. So you may do on that last 4 weeks, you may pull like one set of 3, like your maximum set of 3, and then take off 10% of that. So say if you did like 200 kilos, you'd pull 200 for 3, and then drop back to 180 and do like 2 more sets of that of 3s. So you're getting in like some, say some PRs, but getting some more volume in. So that's just kind of the rationale behind the moderately high reps. Now adapt to some high volume, and then once you're adapted to that, we kind of drop the volume. That allows you to kind of express a lot of the strength that you built.
Can you hear me?
Just barely.
And now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah,
on the whole sets and rep thing, I was thinking about should we go as heavy as we can and maybe fail and not complete all the reps, or should we just go lighter then make sure we complete all the reps?
I would say with all the big stuff, like with barbell movements, definitely don't purposely train to failure. Like if it happens, it happens, not the end of the world. But I wouldn't like, say I pulled this so that's why you kind of have a range. Say if you pulled it for like 6, you're like, wow, this is going to be a really, really hard 2 reps. You pull it for 7, you like barely got it. You don't need to like arbitrarily go for 8. Like if it was a good set, then just go ahead. I would say try to stick away from failure as much as possible. Not just from an injury standpoint, but lifting is also like a confidence thing. If you're always kind of missing sets and reps and it just doesn't give you a good flow, I'd rather people just kind of even be kind of ignorant. Like maybe they'll pull a set of 6 and be like, and then they just drop like, I could have hit 2 more. They couldn't have, but just in the back of their head, they're just like they feel good about their set. And obviously, too, like injury prevention is down there. You also don't need to take stuff to failure to recruit all your muscle fibers. So the risk reward for going to failure on big lifts like that, like on squats and bench and deadlift and things, I just don't think is really worth it. Again, your muscle hypertrophy is going to be mostly dictated off your total volume. So if you're thinking about doing like 1 extra rep, that's not going to equate too much to your total volume, So it's probably not worth it. And I was going to say something else. I forgot what I was going to say about. But yeah, I wouldn't actively train to failure on the barbell lifts. On stuff like curls and push downs and calves and things like that, you can go ahead and go to failure because you're not really going to like feel depleted, and definitely like when you're doing a push down, there's not really any, unless you're getting a little bit carried away with it. There's no real injury risk like doing something like that. Maybe for curl if you're getting carried away. But with like single joint stuff, you can probably take it to failure. Like maybe on your last set. That's another point. Anyone who's trained to failure before too knows they kind of limit their total volume, right? So if you were like to go and pull your first set of deadlifts and you go all out, maybe you hit a set of like 8 and it's just like a PR, and then you have 3 other sets, right? And you're kind of like, holy crap, I'm wiped out. So now your 3 other sets kind of like, you have to take weight off the bar and you're barely getting 6 reps or whatever. So again, we're talking about your total volume being most important. That first set might have been really cool and you crushed it, you went to failure, but then you look at how that affected your total volume on that lift. Does that make sense? So if you maybe kind of go out of the gates really high, you crush it, but then you have to kind of drop the weight off the bar, you're only hitting like the minimum amount of reps, so your total volume is here, as opposed to if you would have just had a pretty damn good set, maybe a pretty hard set and back off a little bit, then your total volume over that working kind of cluster is higher.
What about taking small breaks in like doing 6 curls or whatever, and then taking 10, 15, 20 seconds to be able to finish the other 6?
Yeah, that's a good strategy, kind of like rest pause stuff. That's what people call it. I would like save that stuff for your last set. I wouldn't train like that, like to get go. That's a good way to do like some assistant stuff. And again, for some movements, you just can't do that. Like if you do like a dumbbell bench press, it's not really that advantageous to like hold it up here by 10 seconds. But I do that a lot for isolation stuff. I'll just do like, if I'm trying to do like tricep push downs, I'll hit, maybe if I'm trying to hit 12 to 15, I'll hit like 7 or 8, drop it, take a few breaths, 2, 3 more, take a few breaths. That's a good way to get some more volume in, yeah.
Anyone else have a question, or should I go again?
Go ahead.
About butt wings, and I don't know. I've read so much back and forth about it, if it's good or if it's bad or if it's just no matter. What are your opinions? Should we try to stay above the butt wink or just go into it ass to grass dive?
Yeah,
I missed part of that.
I would say he just asked about butt wink, if you've heard of that. So, I mean, if you're not familiar with butt wink, or if you're watching this not familiar with butt wink, he's just referring to, it's mostly built off like your dimensions. Some people are just built in a certain way, or they can literally drop their hips in between their legs, and there's no kind of like lowering of their lower back at all. Also, a mobility thing. For other people, especially like if you're taller, it's just gonna happen. Like I've trained people who like really like they know how to brace, but they'll get into a position, they'll be pretty vertical, and like just below parallel. It's just they have to kind of. And that's how I am. Like I can't reach. Like if my hip goes below my knee crease, I'll go into butt wink, like at 135. It just has to really happen for me, just the way I'm set up. I would say it's an overrated, the way I put it, people think about it too much. I feel like it's not a big deal. I would say probably more people have to go to butt wink to full squat than people who hit without it. That's just going to be an ability thing, and both people aren't going to be built that way, just to kind of bloop, bloop. As far as avoiding it, I would say just don't arbitrarily squat. Like I know some people just want to squat like incredibly deep, say they squat ass to grass or something. But there's a limit. Like if you can get to parallel, get just below parallel with very minimal butt wink, like that's exactly what I do. That's fine. I can go. I'm capable of going ass to grass, but it's really like my butt wink's incredibly bad. And then a good way to see this, to see kind of like how bad it is to like view yourself from the side. And what you obviously can see like your lower back just kind of rounding at the bottom of it, or it's obviously like it's almost like your pelvis actually. It's not really your lower back. Your pelvis kind of tilts. So as your pelvis tilts, your lower back has to kind of come with it. But you usually see your lower back rounding easier. But you can really kind of tell this. I haven't really talked about this as far as like lifting mechanics, but to be a really efficient lifter with a bench, squat, and deadlift, the bar needs to come like in pretty much a straight up and down line. So if you're going to pull something, anything that's going out here obviously makes the lift harder. Or if you're going to squat, as you like kind of fold over in a squat and the bar gets really far this way, as opposed to coming straight up and down, it gets harder. So what you can see with a lot of people that have really bad butt wink is when their lower back kind of curves, as opposed to their butt shooting up in a squat, their butt shoots out in a squat. So that's kind of a good way to see, and I can do that pretty easily with myself. I can see if I drop incredibly deep in the hole, like if I high bar squat or front squat, and drop like ass to grass, my butt goes like down and then it comes like this as I come up. Like it's seriously that big of a difference. So you want to find a depth where you can pretty much, you're not going to be perfect obviously, but you want to find a depth where your butt is pretty much coming down, and then there's minimal kind of like outward sweat. You want your butt to like, you want to drive through the floor obviously, and then your butt pretty much just coming up, because that's going to again affect the bar path. So that's a way you can kind of judge how, I guess, bad your butt wink is. But that's more from like an efficiency of the lift as opposed to injury. Again, if in another kind of easy, I guess it's kind of common sense, if your lower back is having pain when you're squatting, that could be something to look at. But again, most people I know with a butt wink don't have pain. I would say a lower back issue for squatting, like as far as painful, is more due to hyperextension. So people tend to like really arch their spine really big. They try to sit back with their butt, and their lower back is kind of like this. So then when they come out of the hole, it's kind of have a whole bunch of like tension built up on their lower back. They kind of like arch up really, really hard. So that's probably going to cause more people back issues than that kind of butt wink issue. And the way you can kind of fix the hyperextension stuff is to make sure you can kind of brace properly, also squeezing your glutes really tight. Same thing when you overhead press. A lot of people do that when they overhead press. They get to like a certain distance, and then to finish a lift, they kind of just like break at their spine. They'll kind of just go into hyperextension. But when you squeeze your glutes, you can do this like this if you stand up real quick. You squeeze your glutes, it kind of limits how much flexion or how much extension you can get at your lower spine. So that's a good way to like brace for a squat at the top of it before you're squatting. Really kind of like squeeze your glutes to set your pelvis in line, and then go down. So to shortly answer your question, if you do have a butt wink, if it's not a huge problem, but regulate it, or try to like record yourself from the side and see, okay, when I reach depth here, my butt wink is like severe, but if I just bring my depth off a little bit and I'm still below parallel, it's like, barely any butt wink, then I would probably just change my depth to kind of adjust for that.
So you mentioned
Answer your question,
earlier.
Carl.
Yep. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh yeah, you said something earlier about some people have a leg press complex. Is that something I want? I don't have that one.
It's just if you don't have so it's on lower 2. If you don't have a squat complex, it's just a leg press complex.
Yeah, I have the squat where you do all the back squats and the front squats.
Like
five,
4
4. Okay, so
That's
that would
brutal,
be
huh?
for that. I love the complexes. I think they're really fun. I look forward to them.
They are fun. It's harder too because like you can get more tricky with complexes. Like even the bear complex, I don't like to give to everyone. A lot of people don't have like a lot of practice with the power clean or with something like that. But so I try to keep my complexes relatively simple. Like everyone can kind of front squat and back squat. But you can get like pretty adventurous with complexes. So
Hey, can I tell you that was a sadistic move on your part, that bear complex. That thing can wipe you out.
Yeah,
It
you
is,
gotta go
like-
light.
That's why it's like the only conditioning thing in that whole day.
Well, thank God.
Yeah, I'm just dripping with sweat after, and I go pretty light on it.
Oh yeah, I do too. I think I'd use like 115 or something. I think someone mentioned that they saw online. So I guess like there's like a CrossFit workout that's called like Bear Complex or something, and it's that movement. You do it for 7 rounds, and it's like a time thing. That's how all CrossFit is, right? It's like do this movement in 7 rounds, and what's your best time? And so he thought he had to do it for 7 rounds, 5 reps. So like he's gonna do 7 rounds 5 times, take a break, and then do it for a second set.
No.
I forgot who posted that, and I was like, no, like that would be an hour of bear complexing. Like, please don't do that.
Die.
I was like, no, I should do the bear complex 5 reps as opposed to 7, and then take a break and do that again.
Wow.
That's still a lot, though.
Hey, how about the once a week you have me doing the elliptical, the high intensity interval training on the elliptical, and so I remember reading in your book, like you started off and you in the beginning of the book you say something about cardio, and then later in the book you talk about cardio again. You kind of change your mind on it, but you acknowledge what you said in the beginning of the book, later in the book about cardio, and I guess its importance or its effect on resistance training. And it made me wonder, this elliptical thing is only once a week, I think 30 minutes. What's the benefit of, I mean, why do that once a week, I guess?
As opposed to more frequently?
Yeah, I mean, what's the benefit of doing something just once, like 30 minutes on a Sunday or something?
Well, I mean, I guess you can look at cardio in 2 different manners. So with yours, so like I would say, like with the elliptical workout I have in there, then also like the stationary bike workout I have in there, like those aren't going to be recovery type workouts. So that's going to be like a training session. So that should be high intensity, and I kind of give a layout for that of being 30 seconds as hard as you possibly can, 2 to 3 minutes off, and doing that for a specific amount of time. So that's just going to kind of be a more intense version of weight training. When you think about it, though, that's kind of what lifting weights is. You're doing a movement for a little bit, taking a break, doing a movement for a little bit. But as far as like a heart rate, you're not really going to be able. You shouldn't be able to get that much of a heart rate increase from weight training. And again, weight training's point is to build strength. You're not going to build strength with HIIT. So, but you you don't need a ton of volume with cardio. I probably talked about this in my book. You want to do the least amount of cardio possible to get your kind of desired fat loss. So if someone can lose fat with no cardio, that's probably going to be ideal until they have to do some cardio. So I usually will have I'll never probably have anyone do more than 2 HIIT sessions in a week, like anyone. Also because it hampers your recovery. If you're doing a ton of HIIT cardio, I mean, think about it. If you're squatting twice a week, that's kind of HIIT cardio on your legs. You know what I mean? So if you're already doing squatting twice a week, deadlifting is going to be a little bit of like hamstring glute stuff too. Definitely if you're squatting twice a week, you're doing HIIT once a week. That's kind of like 3 pretty damn intense lower body training sessions, right? So once I get people, and I would say even with just 1 HIIT session, their other cardio is going to be a little bit more like restorative. So they'll probably do like maybe 1 HIIT cardio, and if they stall out, and again, food's going to be another factor here, but if they stall out there and we don't want to make adjustments to their food, they'll probably just add like lower intensity cardio, like maybe not totally low intensity, like just walking, with something like at a good pace, like maybe
Did it disappear for you guys? Greg just
Anybody else just lose Greg?
Yeah, he's just paused there.
He was just about to say what it was.
I know.
Froze up. Oh man. You guys have HIIT in your program?
Yeah, I've got the bike hit and then the elliptical hit. But I broke my elliptical, so I've been doing laps instead in the pool.
Oh.
Yeah, I have nothing different. I have the conditioning only.
Oh, really?
Yeah. 4 workout strength workouts and 1 conditioning.
So I figured 7 workouts a week because I have 4 strength, the 1 conditioning, and then the 2 hit.
Wow.
So that's why I have to like Friday I never can get anything done, so I have to do 2 workouts on one day, I figure.
That's tough.
Yeah.
I didn't know the purpose of the HIIT. I mean, I try and do Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So I have Saturday and Sunday off. And you know, I got a pretty relaxing Sunday, and all of a sudden I got to go down the basement, hop on the elliptical,
Yeah.
and do this intense, you know, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Come back.
Sweetness. I don't know what happened.
Switch over.
There's 2 Greg Ferries on my team.
Yeah, you got 1 paused and 1 live.
Hey,
Oh,
Carl,
really?
I can barely hear you, Carl.
Oh?
Is everybody else hearing Carl okay?
He's very faint.
Oh, okay. Thought it was just me. That's
Okay,
not
so I'm rolling Mac too.
Carl's not. We were talking about that earlier.
So where did I cut off at?
You were just about to name a non-HIIT type aerobic exercise.
Yeah, so I think I was
It's a little more
talking
intense
about.
than walking.
Yeah, so like I would say with it's hard to measure energy expenditure with HIIT just because you're not your heart rate is going from like 180 and then like back to 120 and then to 191 and then back to 130. So it's not going to be like a steady state where you're going to be able to monitor your energy expenditure as accurately. But like maybe for something more restorative and aerobic, and I talked to Jim about this as far as like doing this like the lower intensity stuff on like your off days. So maybe something in that like 10 to 15 calories burned per minute. So if you're gonna do like a 30-minute aerobic between 300.
Cutting out again.
Yeah, he's gone.
Yeah. He's having the same pose as he did last time.
Yeah. It's kind of an unfortunate pose.
So, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. There's something really fishy going on with my mics. I have like 2 mics here. I don't know which one's being used right now.
Am I alive?
back.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
back.
Welcome back.
This is so weird. Okay, I'm gonna finish this topic. Okay. So yeah, the lower intensity stuff is gonna be think of it like a stressor, right? The high intensity stuff you want to do less frequently because it's gonna be much higher of a stress, right? Going all out for 30 seconds is gonna be a lot more stressful than kind of going on a walk in the park for 30 minutes, right? So you can do the low intensity stuff on off days, after training, whatever. It's not going to affect your training, your weight training. It's just going to be a good way to like expend some energy, which again is going to help you with fat loss. So those 2 modalities are pretty much different. I mean, I don't know anyone that does HIIT cardio more than a couple of times, like true HIIT cardio, not just like, people do HIIT cardio. It's like I do like a minute intervals. Like that's not HIIT. That's just going kind of hard. And obviously, you don't need a lot of HIIT cardio to see its benefits. Like I think one of the first studies ever showed that like 4 30-second intervals 2 times a week showed like significant fat loss with people. They weren't using weights either, so that's kind of got like put an asterisk by that. 'Cause they were lifting too. That probably would have been less substantial. But again, it's almost the same thing with nutrition or training. You want to be almost minimalistic with your approach to stuff. That way, when you stall out, you have a lot more bigger kind of gap to add from. If you start off with HIIT twice a week and 2,000 calories of lifts and training 6 days a week, and you're not eating much, and you stall out, you're like, well, I keep going. That's kind of the only thing you can tell people. So, yeah, the HIIT stuff, higher intensity, obviously, which means you need more recovery from it, which means you can't do it as frequently. I'm assuming you guys can hear me still when I'm talking to myself.
Yes.
Yep.
That makes sense. What?
Will you be putting in the goals again for us?
Yeah, for this week, I'll put in like kind of that. I'll look at your weights you did last week. Look at your progress, and obviously that RPE and that overall difficulty too helps me too. If someone put in like they pulled 200 kgs and it was like a 9.5 on overall difficulty, then I probably won't raise their range that much. But if like you put a 7, I'll probably range your range a good amount. But again, it's not anything like incredibly scientific. It's just like 5 to 10 more pounds or 5 to 10 more kilos or something.
Okay.
So I was thinking about stretching, and I haven't stretched for years, like a decade or so, because I'm so agile normally. But I've been trying to do it, but I have like no idea what I'm doing. I'm like stretching. Oh, I'm going to stretch my legs. So I'm just like doing some leg stretches, and can you like give me some routines or something, somewhere to start?
Yeah, I actually think like static stretching is incredibly overrated, right? I think it's a tool that